Morning again, everyone. And I'm sure everyone knows Amitabh Kant. Let's give him a very warm round of applause. He's come back home to Kerala. As we know now, he's the Sherpa for the G20 summit, the all-important summit happening in September. He was former CEO of Niti Aayog, outstanding bureaucrat, headed the ministries of tourism, industry, gave Kerala its famous slogan, God's own country, and built up incredible India. So another round of applause for Amitabh Kant for coming right back home. Now, Amitabh, one of the things that we've been looking at in this conclave is the importance of South in terms of industry and its ability, given the fact that you're now dealing with 20 major nations. What is the opportunity, apart from India, South India has to leverage what it has and plug into this global value chain that we've been talking about?
So Raj, first of all, it's very important to understand that South India contributes to about almost 30% of your GDP. Secondly, its per capita income is much higher than many other states. But more important than that is that states here have excelled in several areas. Tamil Nadu, for instance, has excelled in manufacturing. It is the most outstanding skilled labor available in terms of a range of cutting-edge sectors. You have Telangana, which has excelled in pharmaceutical sectors. Many people do not realize it, but almost 35 to 40% of India's pharmaceutical products come from there. Kerala itself has excelled in travel and tourism in a very big way, and it's created a unique brand for itself. And Karnataka has been the services center for India for almost two and a half decades now. It has driven India's service economy. And Andhra has earlier done a lot of work in manufacturing and also pharmaceutical, but will now, to my mind, be a great area for renewable energy and for green hydrogen and pump storage, etc. So these are states which have charted their own path. And it's also important to understand that Tamil Nadu and Karnataka will be $1 trillion economies soon. In another 2 years, they'll be both $1 trillion economies. So India's ambition to be a $5 trillion economy and then a $10 trillion economy, a lot of that will have to be driven by the southern states. They will have to be the key drivers in the forefront to really drive India's growth in the coming years. And the last point I want to make is that these states have truly demonstrated outstanding work in human development indices. So the quality of life, the social indicators in health, education, nutrition have all been very, very high. I mean, compared to the rest of India, they've been way, way ahead. These are slow-moving indicators. They take a lot of time. But that really shows that work done over several years, despite changes in government, the consistency of policy on social development has really yielded results in these states.
I just want a quick follow-up question. When you look at the fact of exports, for instance, since we're talking about global value chains, we had a huge bump last year. We have now plateaued on merchandise goods. It is services sectors that is booming. And this particular part of India, particularly Karnataka, has this huge IT infrastructure that has actually driven a lot of the services export. What is the next level you think this particular industry has to take, given the fact that we have having artificial intelligence, all kinds of things? How can we leverage that to be really on top of the world in terms of these developments?
So I think that South India must be the key driver of new skill creation. There's a very severe shortage of skills in India. It's impossible to get coders, it's impossible to get great product developers in India. They're very highly paid, it's impossible to get them. It's impossible to get AI and ML engineers today in India. There's a startup called Scalar, which does that, 9 months course it does. So somebody who's passed out of an IIT, and just shows the kind of curriculum we need to restructure. He does a course where a person from triple IIT or IIT gets an entry fee of about 3 lakhs. Once you've done that Scalar course, your salary jumps up to about 30 lakhs. So that really shows that there is a need to completely restructure and redesign your curriculum of triple IITs and IITs for the world of today. 30% of the skilled manpower in 2047 will be all Indians. And these are emerging areas of growth, not merely product developers, not merely AI engineers, not merely coders, but you need a new set of engineers for electric mobility, for green hydrogen, for advanced chemistry, cell battery. These are the emerging areas of growth which are going to take India to the next level of growth. Without these areas, India will never be able to become a $10 trillion economy. I mean, if you look at China, which grew at 10% plus from 1990 to 2010, its emergence is largely because it became a great manufacturer of mobiles. It became a great manufacturer of components. It became a great manufacturer of electric two-wheelers. It became a great manufacturer of electric vehicles and of batteries. So these are areas which have given a huge jump to its GDP, and these are emerging areas. The value you get from them is almost 100x of the value of other traditional sectors. So these are areas. Now the important thing about South India is that these are coastal states. And coastal states make a big difference because you are able to then import components. You are able to, in global value chain, the challenge is that you should be able to get goods from about 100 countries at the lowest cost, put them all together, design and send them out for exports and penetrate global markets. Because they are coastal states and they have good ports, these states have a huge advantage over other states in terms of becoming champions of global value chain in these areas. And I think that is really, they need to leapfrog into every state aiming to become the next Singapore of the world.
Wow.
They should not think of trying to compete with Maharashtra or Gujarat. Each state of South India must say that I'm going to beat Singapore. And that should be the ambition and that should be the hunger in them.
Kaushik, you had a question? Right.
Yeah, you talked about the South driving the growth, and already 30% of the GDP the South accounts for. But at the same time, states from South, they keep complaining about that they get penalized in terms of revenue sharing or taxation in a way that they are actually suffering because of their growth. How can the central government balance that out between South and lesser progressing North?
What he's saying is the price of success. South does so well, contributes enormous amount to the GDP, but when it comes to taxes and shares of taxes, we are not there.
Yeah,
we don't get equal
so
amount.
two ways. One is that we must first understand that we are a large country, so it's not possible that every state is going to grow at the same rate. Some states are going to be leaders. You need 10 Indian states to grow at 10% plus. Secondly, what the new budget has done is that states which focus on disinvestment, which focus on asset monetization, etc., has put out a huge allocation to be given to these states to benefit from. So it's actually given out benefits to states which are moving towards progressive policies. So if you look at the budget of last 3 years, what it does is it incentivizes good policies. And that is the right measure to take. Instead of penalizing, some penalization will take place because you need money to finance other states as well. Otherwise, Bihar, etc., will never be able to grow and prosper. That's important. But you are also providing an incentive for states which are moving to progressive policies in a big way.
No, I want to come back a little bit about what you said about the services sector. Let's take a look at IT. So far, we have been great BPO centers. We have also software. But the next level, the knowledge level, the AI level, the IoT of things, where can we start getting to cutting edge? You don't hear of a Microsoft, you don't hear of a Google, you don't hear of this. How can India become the leaders in that when we talk of it?
So Rash, to my mind, 3 basic things which we need to do is, first is that this is not going to come from established companies. Let me tell you this. This is going to come from a lot of disruption in the startup world. And therefore, my view on this is that each state of southern India must create a unique startup culture. I mean, Google, Microsoft, all these were startups once upon a time which have got huge value. Secondly, each state needs to start its own fund of funds so that it can then support a lot of venture funds so that you can spawn a lot of startups. Thirdly, each state needs to create its own fund of funds for deep tech, because deep tech is something which you are going to get into new areas of space, you're going to get into drones, you're going to get into robotics, you're going to get into health, you're going to get into startups for education and agriculture, all cutting edge. And therefore each state needs to think much beyond what central government is thinking. I mean, the state governments must think 15 years ahead of what the central government is thinking. That's the way India will grow. And to my mind, that level of disruption must come from the states, not the other way around. And secondly, as I said, completely, radically rethink. Rethink not about your traditional sector, because still the thinking is that we'll do some agriculture, we'll do some textile, we'll do some food processing. No. That will never give you the value. Look at what Malaysia did. Actually, Malaysia's whole growth story is that they had a coastal city like Penang, and they were able to attract Intel to put up the first chip plant there. And because Intel came into Penang, that the whole of value addition into manufacturing in Penang took place, and Malaysia grew as a cutting edge manufacturing destination because of Penang only. So each one of the coastal cities here need to actually become a manufacturing destination for cutting edge manufacturing, because they have the ability to import, do value addition and re-export to the world and become a very major integral part of the global value chain. I mean, why does Shenzhen or Wuxi or Shanghai is able to do this? Because it has low turnaround time. Its ports are efficiently managed. And therefore, that is the future for these states. They're still being status quo, though they've done well compared to other states in India. But I think they need to think 10x of what they are doing. The progressive mindset should be that I'm going to beat the city of Shenzhen. I'm going to beat Korea, which has set up this, which has been able to do this. Each one of them must plan. I'm going to beat Singapore. And each state in South India is capable of doing that, because they have a huge advantage in terms of human development index. No other part of the country has that which South India has. I mean, it has invested in social indices over the years, and they must benefit from that.
Kaushik?
But what's stopping the states from doing so? Means you were talking about, you are actually identifying the vision, but we have been talking about these things for quite some time. What's stopping the states? It's lack of policy, lack of political will, or lack of vision, or bureaucratic lethargy?
So first is that all states still have a socialist mindset. They've all grown up in an era of control where government played a key role. Government must retreat in all these areas. They must scrap all rules, regulation, procedures built over the years, and particularly so Kerala. It must allow private sector to grow. It must believe in wealth creation. And government must do only consistent policy making over a long period of time, and government must do only health, education and nutrition. That's my belief. And that's the new political ideology which must come in. The wealth creation must happen all from private sector.
Let's take tourism. This is something very close to your heart. We have not exploited the kind of potential that we have, whether in the south, what does India need to do? What does South India need to do? It's so rich in whatever you've talked about. What does it need to do to go to the next level of tourism? What would you do if you were tourism minister in these states? What would be the key things?
Kerala, we'll talk about this state of Kerala and what we can learn from it. But tourism works on a very simple principle. It works on the principle that how do you differentiate your product from rest of the world? That means, how can you create a unique experience which you can't get anywhere else in the world? Now, Kerala had only one product, which was Kovalam. This was a very low-value destination. We used to get cobblers and garbage collectors from Manchester to come and holiday here. And we used to get charter full of flights. We stopped all that. And we created new products. The backwaters of Kerala, the houseboats of Kerala, not a carpenter was available. They'd all gone away to Gulf. We got them back to do these houseboats. We brought back Ayurveda. We brought back the traditional Kerala cuisine. Much of what you eat now, appams and stew and fish molly was unheard of. We brought back the Kerala martial art, Kalripettam. We brought back the traditional Kerala architecture. All this was being sold as firewood. The Nalkittam houses, we brought back the traditional Kerala art forms, the Mohiniyattam, the Kathakali, all that. We went back to the roots of Kerala and created a great product, and we said, this is God's own country. And what we did was to unleash. This is a state where manufacturing had totally failed because of trade unionism. How did it succeed? Because we said, and unlike Haryana, which was a product of state creating resorts, we said here the private sector will create products. And the private sector created some of the finest, the most unique boutique resorts. The state only did last mile in terms of roads, in terms of jetties, and the state only did destination marketing in partnership with the private sector. So what it shows is that every state, there can't be a better state in terms of a tourism product than Karnataka, than Tamil Nadu. All these are remarkable states. Actually, to my mind, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu have a better product diversity than even Kerala.
Kerala may not like that, but you're saying.
Yeah, I'm being honest. Having worked in Kerala, I can be honest that these have better tourism product. There's no reason why Karnataka should not emerge as the world's #1 tourism destination. There's no reason at all. So each state has a unique ability to create a fascinating experience, which comprises of, look at Karnataka. Hampi, to my mind, is the most magnificent heritage destination. It truly represents India's great civilization. It has wildlife, it has backwaters, it has beaches, it has culture, it has just about everything.
But at the end of the day, you still have to have a Government of India policy that frees up airlines, frees up hotels, building facilitates all those things. Why haven't we done that? Why can't we be a Dubai, a Singapore in terms of air travel?
Yeah.
Because unless you have connectivity of the kind that you have in other places, Qatar, small country, has a huge thing, and we have all the resources, but we don't do it. We don't facilitate our hoteliers. All the states put terrible laws. I'm sure that happens in the south as well. What is going wrong? And if you had the whip on your hand, what would you do?
So let's not, these are large states. Let's not blame center for everything. Look at Kerala. The center refused to finance the airports in Kerala. I was a district collector in Calicut. There was a colleague of mine in Cochin. Cochin created a world-class airport, which is India's greenest airport today. All state funding, private sector funding. We expanded the Calicut airport, Kerala, and then Kerala created the Kannur airport. In a small strip of land, we have 4 airports. Let's not let the states not keep falling back on center and saying you are to be blamed. Today you have very good air connectivity. You have a Bangalore airport. You have Trivandrum, Cochin. Every state has an airport, and I think states should generate wealth, get the private sector to participate. These are unique models of private-public partnership. If we could do Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Bangalore, all in private-public partnership, why should the states not create their own airports?
You're being kind to the center. You're not even saying anything what the center should do. You've whacked the states.
No.
Is this because you're Sherpa?
No. Because I'm a believer that quite often we get into this business about states blaming center and center blaming states. We should get into this business of states being wealth creators on their own, structuring projects on their own, and driving growth.
I'm saying, what does the center need to do? Fine, the states are to blame. What does the center have to do, you think?
Center, I think, should really do consistent policy making with the clear perspective that government must retreat from a large range of areas, and that's been the government's philosophy. The center has ushered in a lot of reforms in terms of GST, IBC, RERA, lower corporate taxes. That's the government's policy. The central government is just the policy framework. Many of these areas like education, health, nutrition, infrastructure, the government has created 55,000 kilometers of road, the central government through the NHAI scheme. What more do you need? Rest is also state's job. Don't keep pushing that I'm going to blame center and state. Let's not get into that business. Let's say that every state, as I said, must have a clear perspective. I'm going to drive growth at 10% plus for the next 3 decades. And what is my core competency? If my core competency is going to be tourism, I'm going to be the world's best in tourism. If my competency is going to be services, I'm going to be the world's number one. And there's no reason why Karnataka should not be the world's number one, why Microsoft and Google should not emerge from Karnataka. What's the reason? The only way out is that you need to create the next generation of skills. You need to restructure your IITs and triple IITs. You need to make Karnataka the finest destination for that. And Tamil Nadu, why should it not be the Detroit of the world?
You know, if you stood for political office, I'm sure most people here would vote for you, the way you speak. But Kaushik, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, you talked about policy making by the central government. Now going back to your G20 role, India is focusing a lot on digital infrastructure, and we have done very well in terms of digital infrastructure, but we still do not have a data privacy bill. How do we balance that? Because once we have such UPI from Aadhaar, everything on digital infrastructure, we have done really well in the world, but we cannot protect the citizens' right to privacy.
So the data privacy bill is in its final lap. As you are aware, the earlier bill was scrapped and a new bill, which is cutting edge, designed for the world of tomorrow, is being drafted. It's better to create a law which is for the world of tomorrow rather than creating laws which are totally outdated and outmoded like we constantly keep doing. So I think it's better to wait for the data privacy law, but on digitization, India has done enormously well. India is way ahead of the rest of the world in terms of having provided identity, bank accounts, digital fast payments. We do about 11x fast payments than what USA and Europe do. We do 4x of what China does. We do about 50% of the real-time fast payments in the world. India needs, really, it's a model which we've created for the rest of the world as very distinct from the big tech model of USA, as very distinct from the GDPR model of Europe, which has killed innovation, but India has allowed private-public partnership to take place in digital. You know, that's why the cost of acquisition of customers in India has really fallen. It used to be $30 per customer before all the digitization and the bank accounts had taken place. It's come down to $1. In the United States, the cost of customer acquisition is still about $100. That's why a company like Jio could actually acquire 250 million consumers in just about 100 days. I mean, many of us don't realize this, but India is really pole vaulted in this area.
That's
Can we therefore
fine.
be... Sorry,
Sorry, yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a counter question. That's perfectly fine, but before the law comes in, a robust law, I hope, but all the data that we have, it's already in government hand and in private hands, which actually compromise privacy. Means how do we protect that? Because we do not have a law still.
India is the only country which has created a techno-economic solution for that the data is owned by the citizens of India. So account aggregator system or OECN or even your digital fast payments, the data belongs to you. You give actual permission for use, which is not the case with big tech in United States. The data is owned by the big tech. It's actually, innovation in the last 2 decades have been driven by Google, by Facebook, by Amazon, by Microsoft, by Apple, and in the case of China, by Tencent and Alibaba. Not in India. India, we created a public layer, and on top of which we've allowed PhonePe to compete with Google Pay. We've allowed Paytm to compete with WhatsApp. That's the competition taking place in the marketplace. So 40 different startups are competing with each other in the market space. It's not happening anywhere else in the world. There's been a true democratization of digital technologies in India.
Let's take that to the next level, which is why can't an Indian company become like Amazon? Why does it sort of look at its own navel all the time? We have set up the base, the foundation, the India stack and everything else. All it needs is to leapfrog. Like you said, we should be world leaders in this. Why aren't we world leaders in e-commerce?
So I really feel that in the coming years, you will see a lot of young Indian startups doing that kind of a disruption and penetrating global markets. After all, we've been able to create, look at what we did. I gave you the story of payment, but look at the next step. You had the next set of startups like Lending Cart, MobiKwik, all doing credit, which was paperless, cashless. And then on the payment history, you had a next set of startups like Zerodha, Grow, Upstock. Look at Zerodha. 30% of your stock market is being controlled by Zerodha. In 5 to 6 years' time, 30% of the startup means that he's penetrated tier 2, tier 3, he's penetrated rural areas. And then you had a next set of startups which are doing insurance, end-to-end insurance. I used to buy an insurance policy, it used to take me 5 months, 6 months. They do insurance in 2 minutes. Digit and Acco are doing insurance in 2 months. They're all unicorns, all emergence from South India. These are all creation of South India.
We've got about 4 minutes.
All these, let me tell you these are unicorn models which are going to the rest of the world.
I'm going to deviate from the subject that we are in South India because we have you as G20 Sherpa and we just want a quick update. Where have we reached? Are we going to get any resolution on the Ukraine question in G20? Or are we going to duck that aside? What are the big takeaways you're seeing for the summit ahead?
So Raj, first thing is that on all priorities we are being very ambitious. It's important to understand that Russia-Ukraine is an important issue as far as Europe is concerned. But there are many other important issues. There's an important issue because you have 1/3 of the world in recession. You have 200 million people who've gone below poverty line. You have 100 million people who've lost their jobs because of COVID. You have 75 countries which are facing a global debt crisis. You have an issue of climate action and climate finance. All these are very critical, very major issues of the world. So it's not possible for us to forget all these critical issues which are impacting the global south, emerging markets, developing markets, and just keep focusing on Russia and Ukraine like you are doing. That's an issue which is important, but not the most important issue for us. So we need to bring developmental issues to center stage, and that is what we are doing. We are being ambitious in all other issues. And if there is a challenge of Russia-Ukraine, we'll do our best to bring consensus. We'll do our best to request all countries, because after all, G20 works by consensus. And in Indonesia, actually, all ministerials had not succeeded. But in the final round, we were able to hammer out a paragraph 3 and 4, which brought everybody together. So I'm quite optimistic. I'm very hopeful that ultimately we'll bring everybody around. But in the meanwhile, we should push all these issues which are impacting the global south.
Yeah. And if you had to give us a status report, where do you see the breakthroughs? Is there a big 2 or 3 big breakthroughs that you think we could achieve in the G20 summit?
We are being very, very decisive. We are being very inclusive. We are being very ambitious. We are being very action-oriented, as the Prime Minister said. And the Prime Minister is the leader. He's been very, very action-oriented. We've pushed through very, very decisive things in our G20.
1 or 2 things that you push through you think that is going to be successful?
SDG action plan. We are pushing a green development agenda. We are pushing for a lot of digital transformation of the world. All these are very, very... I mean, look at this. 4 billion people in the world do not have a digital identity. 3 billion people do not even have a bank account. 133 countries do not even have a fast payment mechanism. During COVID, we were able to put money into the bank accounts of 800 million people rather than giving large packages. We were able to protect our population. And therefore, we need to take this model to the rest of the world. That is what the G20 is attempting to do.
Quick question, last question, Kaushik.
It's a kind of out of syllabus question. You have worked very closely with Prime Minister Modi, and you are a kind of superstar bureaucrat. Now, recently, Mr. Rahul Gandhi has said that Modi can even teach the God and can confuse the God. So now, working with the Prime Minister, do you think he comes to you as the God, or he's keen to listen to bureaucrats or people who work with him? Do you believe in the Rahul Gandhi's assessment of Prime Minister Modi? Because you have worked very closely with the Prime Minister.
No, I don't want to get into politics. That's not my objective. But I worked with the Prime Minister. I was a Secretary, DIPP, Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion, 9 years back. So I've been working with him for about almost 9 years. All I can say is that the PM, and I worked with him on ease of doing business, opening up of the foreign direct investment regime. I have worked with him on a range of areas, including aspirational districts, Make in India, Startup India, all these whole range of areas. Let me tell you that when we started Startup India, there were just about 450 odd startups. Today we have 99,000 startups in India. And the Prime Minister is very futuristic. He's he's very visionary. He's a tough, hard master. He wants delivery on ground, and he ensures, and that's the only reason why we've been able to work. He believes in breaking silos, and that's the reason why we've been able to do. I mean, look at the size and scale of the transformation. It's important to understand this. I keep saying this because 40 million houses is like making a house for every Australian. I mean, 243 million water connection is like providing a water connection to everybody in Brazil, and 110 million toilets, 2.5 billion COVID vaccination during COVID. Nowhere in the world has this happened. And that's why, the Bank of International Settlement, BIS, in a study has said that India achieved in 8 years what it would have taken 50 years to achieve. 8 years, what it would have taken 50 years to achieve, and actually that has been reiterated by the new Morgan Stanley study. So, India's remarkable in delivery on ground. I did the aspirational district program. These were all backward districts, the most backward districts in India. Nothing was working. Far-flung, geographically far-flung areas. He asked us to work only on data, on competition, on putting the ranking out in public domain, and districts were transformed in 4 years' time, simply because of competition, data, good governance.
Well, let's use your slogan that you use for tourism. It's Incredible India. Amitabh, thank you very much, Amitabh Khan, for this. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a very warm round of applause.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.